Everyone, welcome to Wisdom Wednesday. Glad to see so many of you jumping on. I'll give it a couple minutes to let people land. Talking about a really big topic today, the inner child. We all have one. If you don't think you have one, maybe you'll learn some things today that might connect with experiences you've had. So yeah, good to see all of you. I'm looking at everyone's names. Hey, Gretchen. Hey, Harriet. Lots of people jumping on this call today. This came actually out of a course that I'm teaching right now. And someone brought up a question about inner child. And it really was the inspiration of like, oh, we need to unpack this a little bit more. And it's a common term that's thrown around. We need to heal our inner child, heal our inner child. And so I think it's a useful thing for us to understand a little bit more about today. Yeah, thank you. Jennifer says you're a brave soul, or maybe a a crazy one for tackling this subject. I want to tackle it in such a way that you can actually, oh, Sean, I got to get you. Can you just turn off your camera, Sean? There you go. Thanks. Just let me get my stuff all put together. There we go. I want to set the stage too, that today we're going to talk for about 30 minutes about inner child. I think it's really good to get a clear vision. I think there's a lot of great stuff out on TikTok, and there's a lot of stuff that is just scratching the surface. And so maybe gives us not the full view. And so I'm hoping to give maybe a little fuller view of what inner child is all about. But really, what I want to provide today is an experience. So if you're driving today, you're going to want to watch the last half of this hour at home in a place where you can close your eyes, go inward. We're going to do a healing meditation to connect us with inner child. It's a beautiful resource. It's something I do with clients a lot, and always seems to bring something forth for people that sometimes is surprising to them. So let's go in and start our process today. So we're going to seek to understand our inner child, maybe in a new way. I'm going to talk about what it is, why these first 10 years of our life are so important, why all of us have some wounding from our childhood, no matter how loving and beautiful your home life was. We all get some wounding from childhood. Why we need to feel. This is a huge part of working with inner child, is allowing ourselves to feel the feelings. And then we're going to do some meditation. Those of you who are new to my work, I always put this slide up. I do a lot of integration of yoga and psychology, bring in spirituality, neuroscience, kind of the melding of all of these different topics. And these are different ways you can connect. I do a Wisdom Wednesday that's talk the first Wednesday of every month. Got a podcast that comes out every week. And then I put this up because I just heard from the yoga company I work with, One Yoga Global, and the Costa Rica retreat, which is coming up May 11 to 18, there's a room that just opened. So if anyone is needing a healing retreat, a getaway, I think it might be the favorite retreat center I've ever been to, and I've been to a fair amount of them. If this is curious to you, go to One Yoga Global, click Costa Rica, and then you'll see my name. Okay, so this is where we're going to start today. So I'm in the midst of teaching a course called Yoga for the Mind. It's about 5 to 6 month journey. It's a combination of yoga teachers, therapists, coaches, psychologists, serious yoga students. And we are essentially working on this continuum. So this is what I showed them in their very first class. We're about 7 weeks into this course, and we keep coming back to this slide over and over. And I feel like it's a really good start to this conversation about our inner child. So in this model, and this really, this does come from Eastern thought, yoga philosophy. It's this idea that when we come into this world, we are both human and we could say spirit, right? So that we have both a part of us that's in our body, and then maybe our soul, bigger part of who we are, is beyond that or bigger than that. So, our lifetime, we move sort of up and down this continuum. Most of the time, we're really in our human form, meaning we are sort of stuck in the day to day, getting through life, making decisions, figuring things out. But through specific practices, whether it's prayer, meditation, yoga, journaling, therapy, quiet walks in nature, we start to move up this continuum more towards our higher self. And let's flesh out a little bit. What is our higher self? Your higher self is your soul, your essence. Um, your higher self is wise, compassionate, good, lacking nothing, extremely wise, knows exactly what you need. But because of the challenge of being on this planet in these bodies, we often get stuck in patterning that sort of keeps us distanced from our higher self. And in general, we are going to feel better if we are moving up this continuum and dipping into higher self states more often. Now, it doesn't mean that we're in higher states all the time, because we're in a human body, which means there's challenge and stress and overwhelm and pain. It's just how it goes. But on the left side of the slide, you see there's several different descriptions of human self below it. And these are when our human self gets really imbalanced, stuck, overwhelmed, um, ego, pain body, inner child, and shadow self. So in this program, Yoga for the Mind, we're doing a lot of work, because until you bring a lot of consciousness to the ways that you're stuck, you can't move through them. Like, nothing changes. We have to bring consciousness to where we're stuck. So I laughed with this group. There's about 60 of us in the program, that on that first night, we went into the deep end. I pushed them into the deep end. Here we are. We're going to look at our shadows. We're going to look at our inner children. We're going to work with our pain body. And luckily, no one has dropped out yet. They're still hanging with me in this program. So, and I say that with a slight uh, sense of jest, but truth too, right? Doing the inner work is not easy work per se, but when we start to, what I often say, reclaim these aspects of ourself that we've distanced ourselves from, whether it's inner child, whether it's aspects of our shadow, we actually get more vibrant, we get stronger, we get clearer. So I see life as sort of a process of going back and reclaiming all the little parts of you that got splintered off throughout the course of a lifetime. So today, we're not working necessarily with ego, pain, body, shadow, self. They are all sort of intermixed, but we're focusing in on the inner child. So I'm actually beautifully impressed that there's 81 of us on this call today, which means that um, s- you guys were brave also for showing up for this conversation. I have to admit to all of you that I was very resistant to inner child work within my own self for a very long time. In fact, it hasn't been in it's really the last 7 to 8 years. I've been doing some more inner child work in myself with various therapists. And it's also when I've really been bringing it into the work I do. I understand now why I was resistant. So if all of you are feeling a little resistance, like, what is this inner child? Is it scary? Should I avoid it? Why, what's the point of it? I'm an adult. Why should I go back and relive my childhood? You aren't alone. And so I have developed a very new relationship with resistance, because I see resistance, when resistance shows up in your body, in your mind, in your heart, it's often a sign that there's something in this activity that's really going to evolve your soul. So we tend to feel the most resistance to the things that have the greatest possibility to shift us. I really, really believe in this concept. And so, if you are already noticing a little bit of resistance or fear in your heart or mind, it's okay. And I would say allow it to be there. Allow that resistance to be there and get curious about it. I feel like resistance can be one of our greatest teachers if we allow ourself to actually really go there. So let's talk about maybe why the things that I've heard in terms of why people are resistant. I have a client that I years and years ago that I was working with that I said, I really think that we have to go back to the root. We have to go back to the root of what is going on or why these behaviors have come forward. And I remember she had kind of her hands on her hips and she's like, "You're not making me go back and do that inner child shit work, are you?" And we laugh at it now because through a period of time, we did go back and do inner child work. And she says now that it was the profound shift she needed to be able to move through what she was experiencing as a 50-year-old woman. She really had to go back and connect some dots to understand the here and now, and they did relate to things that were going on in her childhood. I have a really good friend who I actually saw yesterday, and she's been engaging in some of her own inner child work in this last year. And so she is open to talking to me about it. So I asked her yesterday, I said, were you resistant to this work at first? And she's like, "Oh, yes." And what she said to me, she's like, I come from a really loving family. She said, I have great parents. I still have good relationships with them. We communicate well, right? There wasn't any abuse, there wasn't any major breakdown in my family of origin. And so I was really resistant to it. And she said, what I didn't realize about inner child work is you don't have to blame parents. This work isn't about blaming your parents for something that they didn't do or didn't see or didn't take care of. It's about acknowledging that the experience that you had as a child somehow shifted your patterning and how you interact today. And that's what we're going to get in. When we're talking about inner child, so we understand why we blow up, why we shut down, why we cry, right? I want to take the inner child to what's going on in the adult life. But and for some people on this call, you did have trauma, pain, divorce, big challenges in your childhood. And so you can see that and say, yeah, I see how scared my little child was. I can remember how scared I was as a kid. But for those of you listening today that said, I actually came from a really relatively calm and loving household, how could I have a wounded inner child? Well, I need you to understand that we process things so much differently as children. So I want to pull up this screen for you to sort of see some of the realities of how children think. So there they are, those sweet kids on the grass. So, developmentally, children are unable to recognize that the perspective they have is limited. They also tend to believe everything they see. Their interpretation of what is going on becomes the reality. So, an example of this is if something bad happens to a child and they can't make sense of why that would have happened to them, their interpretation becomes, because they can't figure out why it happened, I am bad, right? And then that concept of I am bad stays with them throughout the course of a lifetime. Children also are very black and white thinkers. They think very much good versus bad. Even the movies we show our children are often the good versus the bad. And one of the core things as a cognitive behavioral therapist that I try to do with people is help adults see when they're stuck in black and white thinking. This is sort of a repeat from the past. As children, we automatically think in black and white. Children also don't yet necessarily have boundaries. Children require absolute connection with their caregivers, right? They are fully dependent upon their caregiver feeding them and caring for them. And so it's actually behooves them to stay open, right? To stay open and not have these strong, strict boundaries. And then last but not least, children are so egocentric, right? We don't want to be egocentric when we're 45 years old. But as a child, if you go back to you have children in your life that are 5 or 8 or 10, they still believe the world revolves around them. They also have magical thinking, which means when something happens that they can't make sense of, they can create a story in their head around why they must have been a part of why that car crashed in front of them because they were looking too closely at the lights. And then do you see how kids think, right? So it's really important for us to know that there doesn't have to be even like a major trauma or necessarily huge hardship that we might define as trauma in childhood to have some inner wounding, your inner child have some inner wounding. The psyche of children is very tender, it's very fragile. And so what might look like a very minor event to you as a parent, you're just going through your day, getting things done, might really be something that a child feels neglected by or feels harmed by. So I want to make really clear because I'm a parent, right? I'm a parent of 3 kids. I acknowledge that I'm sure I have done things that have wounded my children. I have always had the best of intentions. I've always or attempted to be doing my best job, but there have been times I'm certain I've fallen short, that I have ignored them, they felt neglected, I haven't shown up when they needed me. I told them to quit crying, right? These are all things that we as parents do. So, inner child work, again, is not about blaming the child. We're going to get to this later, but really what it's about is us acknowledging where there's some inner wounding that may go back to our childhood. And then, can we reparent ourselves? Can we bring ourselves the compassion, the attention, the love, the connection that maybe we needed then? Another caveat here, by the way, is sometimes our wounding as children don't even happen in the family home, right? The family home may feel very safe and connected, but there was a wounding by a teacher or someone in a social group or wounding from an older child towards us, right? So there are definite experiences. We just want to know that all of us at some point, because we were these open, beautiful, expressive children, we do get impacted by life, and life is not, this life is fraught with challenge for sure. So the actual term inner child was coined by Carl Jung. And for those of you who have been working with me, you know that I'm a big student of Jung. And he was really the first one to acknowledge we have 2 parts to our mind. We have a conscious mind, which is above the surface. It's the part of our mind that is thinking and analyzing and planning and writing things down. And it's a very active part of our mind. And we also have a very deep subconscious mind. In fact, it's estimated 70 to 80% of sort of automatic behavior is run from our subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is really useful to get to know. We, of course, I believe in our lifetime, we'll never be able to fully map out our unconscious mind, but we can certainly get to know aspects of it so that we actually have more agency. We have more control in how we're working with our life. Now, according to Jung, the inner child is in that subconscious mind. So it's the part underneath the surface. And for all of us, we have parts of our childhood that we pushed away. And some of the things we pushed away is our playful, creative, silly, free-spirited self. So as an adult, like that has been pushed away. That is deep down in that subconscious. We also have pushed into that subconscious challenging aspects of the inner child, right? The inner child who felt judged or unloved or lonely or sad or neglected or scared, right? All of this gets pushed into that subconscious. Now, there's a wonderful biologist named Dr. Bruce Lipton. He's got really powerful videos and books out there. I would definitely check him out. And he's really big on talking about, by the way, this is my sweet daughter, Greta, who doesn't look like this anymore, but she is 7 in this photo, which is why, or actually she's 6 in this photo. She's 12 now, so she's twice as old. But Dr. Bruce Lipton really talked about our thoughts are mainly controlled by our subconscious, which is largely formed before the age of 6. And you cannot uh, get through the subconscious mind you can't change it just by thinking about it. That's why the power of positive thinking will not work for most people. The subconscious mind is like a tape player. Until you change the tape, it will not change. So, this is why going back and doing the inner child work is so effective and useful. There are specific tapes that got recorded in our first 6, 7, 8 to 10 years of life. These are some good tapes. There's some, powerful ones. There might also be some messaging in there that as an adult, that messaging is no longer working for us. It's keeping us stuck. It's keeping us engaging in behaviors that don't serve us. The challenging part about this is that, again, you can't just say, I'm going to change those inner tapes. Like, just, I'm going to think positive. I'm going to say positive things to myself. It doesn't work like that. But Dr. Lipton would be the first to say, you do not have to just live with the subconscious tapes that were taped in those first 6 to 7 to 8 years. You actually have the capacity to create new patterning. And his recommendations, which I stand behind, are hypnosis, meditation, and energy psychology. So working more with energy, which, again, check out his website. He's got lots of ideas. All right. So Dr. Lipton says that in those first 7, 8 years of life, our brain waves, and someone asked this actually in my webinar chat, we are mostly in theta brain waves when we are children. So what this means is that our brainwave is in a state of high receptivity. So as adults, we are in theta when we're just sort of in that space of falling asleep, when we're dreaming, when we're in deep meditation. Anytime I use hypnosis with a client, their brainwaves most likely go into theta. Right. So in theta states, we are almost as receptive and open as we possibly can be. I would say that also, I'm imagining that if we were to measure students at the end of a yoga class, the brain waves are probably, near that theta range. Again, it's a very soft sort of state, and it's a very open state. So what this means is that when we're between the ages of 0 and 7, we are like sponges. We are taking in all the energy around us. We're downloading every encounter. We don't have the judgment or the logic or the rationality yet to make sense of it. It's just all kind of coming in, and it's setting up that subconscious mind, right? So all of that programming and patterning, it's theorized, is because kids are mostly in theta. And for those of you who work with kids, they're these little dreamy, imaginative, just sort of floating through life, right? It would make sense that we're taking in a lot. And it goes without saying that if we were raised in those first 7 years in a somewhat chaotic environment, a stressful, uncertain environment, the basis for the rest of our life might be coming out of some of that, what was encoded during those early years. Likewise, if we were raised in a more stable, loving environment, that is going to also be at the basis of how the rest of our life unfolds. But again, I must say, we are not slaves to our unconscious mind. This is so important. We are not slaves to our unconscious mind. Again, there's lots of tools that help us navigate and understand and reclaim parts of the unconscious mind. Now, if we don't do it, this is a very famous quote by Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life and you will call it fate. So until we get under the surface and start to understand what's underneath the tip of that iceberg. Things are just going to play out in life, and you're going to say, well, that was weird, or that was fate, or I don't know how that ever happened. That's crazy, right? And what Jung would say is, no, some of our work is to actually understand these subconscious patterns that keep us choosing the same partner over and over, even though it's never worked out, or keeps us going back to the same old job with the same type of boss. This patterning, right? We have to understand, again, what are, just like I said to my client all those years ago, what are the roots of this? We have to understand the roots of this so you can actually begin to make conscious choice. You can actually do it differently. So how does this apply to us? So I put together some, and this list is probably that we could add more and more. But how do you know your inner child is actually in the driver's seat of your life? So instead of you as the healthy, functional adult who's got a job, who, pays your bills, gets going every morning, we want our adult in the driver's seat. But unfortunately, because that subconscious mind often takes over and runs our life, we need to be able to know when that little wounded child in us is actually in the driver's seat. So here's some potential signs. You have an angry outburst akin to a temper tantrum, and it sort of shocks you. You're like, I can't believe I got that mad. What just happened there? Something minor happens, like something that really you should be able to let slide off your back. And instead, you go into a shame spiral. You sort of shut yourself out from other people. You get very lonely and disconnected. If you feel like a victim, if you look back on your life and kind of see, and this happened, and I'm always being victimized, I'm always having something bad happen, that can often be a sign of the inner child kind of stirring some things up or coming forward. If you let others dictate how you feel, or you struggle setting up your own boundaries. If you feel safer when you put up walls, so you get very boundaried and rigid and keep people out. If you are codependent, you put other needs before your own. Let's take a moment to talk about codependence. This came up in my class recently as well, talking about codependence. Codependence is when we often aren't connected to our own needs. We're not listening to our own needs. And so we are putting more of our effort onto making sure everyone else around us is okay. It's often a symptom of the wounded child, and a lot of the codependent literature comes out around children of alcoholics, children of workaholics, children who have had parents with addiction, often tend to be or can become codependent in terms of taking care of the family, taking care of everyone around them to make sure things stay safe so that they're okay. There's some great books by Melody Beatty out there if any of you want to learn more about codependence. And of course, great 12-step programs out there as well. Finally, this high need for control and order. So if as a child, things felt way out of control and chaotic in your growing up experience, it can be really common that you have a high need for control and order. And that it's also like, it can't, so an example I'm trying to provide for you right now is not, I like control, right? I like order. I like things in their place. Someone who's wounded child is really all about high need for control. If anything is out of place, if someone messes something up, if the kitchen was clean and now it's got some things on it, they can really have a huge emotional response. So usually these signs come connected with some big emotional response that feels like a little out of context, or it feels a little bigger, like I reacted a little bit bigger, or I'm way more upset than I maybe should be in the context of this. That's often a big sign that there's something really triggering your inner child. Your inner child isn't feeling safe or understood or heard, or feels really scared. And so boom, this is why you're having this big emotional reaction as an adult. It's a really good question. Do we need to figure out why our inner child is in charge before we can change? It's a good question, Margaret. And I would say my question is like both and. It can be really helpful to go back, and I think the exercise we're going to do here at the end may take you into some understanding of where some of the roots of this need for maybe being in control or setting up big boundaries or having no boundaries. So it can be helpful for us to understand it, because we want to be able to catch the pattern. Subconscious patterning, it keeps rolling, right? It is like the dentist music office playing in the back, right? That it's always playing. The tape is always going. It's very subliminal. It's always there. And so that tape is just going to keep going until we shine the light of consciousness on it and say, oh, okay. The reason I have codependence is because I had a parent who was often drunk, and so I needed to make I needed to make things okay in the home, and I needed to be as good as I could so that maybe they would show up more appropriately, right? So in some ways, it helps us to go back and understand it. But I will say, and I'll give you an example of this in a moment, if you just allow the emotions to roll through, this can also, in and of itself, help you clear it. So let me talk more about that. So it all essentially comes down to feeling. I often am a broken record about this because I feel like as healthy adults, we have to feel. We have to feel all the feels. We have to realize that all feelings are information. There's no bad feeling. There's no feeling that is uncalled for necessarily or problematic. They're just feelings. We're exquisitely wired to feel our feelings. And emotions are like superpowers. They tell us exactly what is happening in the moment, right? They really guide us. They're so powerful when we can feel our feelings. Now, I know for some of you on this call, you might say, I'm pretty numbed out. We're going to talk about that also in a moment. I'm pretty numbed out. I don't feel that much. My range is pretty narrow. And there, if you are taking an antidepressant medication, your range is more narrow. That's how those medications are designed to help. I'm not suggesting you go off medication. I'm not suggesting medication is bad, but I do see a lot of clients who say, I'm not feeling some of the highs that I used to feel because I'm on this medication. They're also not feeling the lows, and that's the point, right? Some of the really dark lows can be very intense, and that's how those medications work. But in general, we are wired to let our emotions flow through us. We are wired to feel the experience, feel the emotion. The average emotion lasts about 90 seconds. It rolls through the body. And then in an ideal situation, it's released, it's gone, right? So you cry really hard for 90 seconds or a couple minutes, and then boom, it's like the wave has passed and it is gone. Now, the problem is that so many of us were raised being scared of our emotions, or that there were certain emotions that were okay to feel on this list, and there were other ones that we weren't allowed to show or share. Anger is a big one, right? There's a lot of homes or a lot of families or a lot of situations where anger is like a bad thing. Anger is not a bad thing. Anger is just telling you something is not right here. It's okay to feel angry. So what happens when we learn from a teacher, from an older adult, from a grandparent, from a parent, from people in our lives that these emotions are not okay? This is often what it is, the no feel rule or the no talk rule, right? We don't feel those things in this house, or we don't talk about that. We start to repress. We start to push away all of these beautiful emotions. I'm not supposed to feel jealous. I'm not supposed to be disappointed. I'm not supposed to be scared. I'm not supposed to be afraid, right? And so we start to push these emotions, which are energy, down. We repress them. And then what starts to come forward is shame. And I come from a very supportive, loving family, and I had a lot of feelings. I had a lot of feelings as a kid, right? And I remember that I would often sometimes feel shame, like, how come I feel so sad? How come I feel so scared? Right? I wouldn't often express that to my parents, but I felt shame. Shame is sometimes called the master emotion, right? If we believe a certain emotion is wrong, anger, sadness, fear, guilt, whatever, we feel that we're not supposed to feel this. And by the way, you men out there, I have so much compassion for you because holy cow, there's a lot of judgment and there's a lot of messaging out there to men about what they're allowed to feel and not feel. But the deal is because we're wired to feel all these exquisite emotions, if we feel one that we believe we're not supposed to feel, we feel shame. We feel bad about ourselves. Why am I so sad? I have so much great potential. Or why am I so scared? I shouldn't be this scared. Why am I so scared about taking that new job? And so it's the Buddhist would call it the double arrow. You're already having a challenging emotion like fear or sadness. And then you tell yourself, I shouldn't be feeling this way. I shouldn't be feeling this way. Why am I feeling this way? That's like the double arrow. You get hit again. So shame is really involved in the idea of don't talk, don't feel, right? These messages we often get. And these happen, I can think back in third grade having a teacher very much not okay with any emotions that were shown. So we learn these in lots of different arenas in our lives. There's a well-known psychologist named John Bradshaw, and he's written a book. Actually, it's called Homecoming. It's actually a really good book about reclaiming and healing your inner child. And in this book, I love this. He says, my family was no different from the millions of other Western families that carry the belief of 300 years of rationalism. Rationalism is the belief that reason is supreme. Being reasonable is what constitutes being human, while being emotional is less than human. Repression and the shaming of emotions has been the rule in most Western families. So I don't know about you, but was that your experience? Repression and the shaming of emotion has been the rule in most Western families. And I would say in Western culture, right? In our culture, I cannot tell you how many times in my therapy room or in the yoga studio where I teach, people cry. And it's so common that the first thing out of their mouth is, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for crying. I'm so sorry. I don't know where this is coming from. Right? We automatically believe that our emotion that's coming up and out is wrong. And then we feel bad about it. I'm not going to get into that one. I'm looking at my time. I'm like, dang, we got to get to this meditation we're going to do. So when we feel shame, we automatically numb out. These are in psychology called sort of coping skills, or the way that we distract ourselves from pain and shame. Denial, it's not really happening. Repression, it never happened. Dissociation, I don't remember it. So many of us that often don't remember a lot of our childhood, we might have been quite dissociated for much of it. Projection, it's happening to you, not me. Conversion, we see a lot of this in our modern culture. I'm feeling something that I'm uncomfortable with, so I'm just going to eat it away, drink it away, smoke it away, have sex, do something to numb it so that it's not really happening. And then minimizing is another big one. It happened, but it's not a big deal. I see this a lot. Is, it wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, it's okay. I'm totally over it. It didn't really bother me, right? That's called minimizing. I don't want to feel this pain. Again, the only way through is to feel it. You got to feel all of it so you can heal. And what I have to tell you all, and this is some of the challenge with inner child work, is that we actually have to allow the feeling that got pushed down as a child, it has to come back up and out. So this isn't just a one-step process. This isn't just a one session process, a one meditation process. This is a period, a process, I would say, of healing. We have to stay with the emotion and let it come up. And someone said, with the repressed inner child emotions, can they last longer than 90 seconds? Yeah, they definitely can last longer. The energy is stuck. So let's say the emotion was fear. You were told little boys don't get scared. You can't feel that. You shouldn't feel that. Come on, get with it. That fear gets repressed down into the system, into the body. It gets stuck. Another way we can think about sort of this whole concept of inner child is just stuck energy, right? Like that emotion gets stuck in our system. And when we're doing yoga, or we're doing meditation, or we're doing all these practices, that emotion can start to come up. And so that's why I'm always encouraging people in therapy or in yoga, if I see emotion surfacing, please let it come up and out. You don't even know what you might be releasing from long ago, but please let that come up and out. I will give an example here that might ground this a little bit more. Last Monday, I had a lot of sadness come up. I could not necessarily pinpoint anything that had been happening or anything going on in my life or any situation. It can be dangerous when emotions come up because we do try to look in our life and say, oh, it must be this or it must be this. But I had a sense that there was just something trying to move through my system. So I did a little bit of bouncing meditation, which in my program, we talk a lot about bouncing. It's a way to sort of clear the nervous system. And I did feel these big waves of grief start to come up. What I observed in myself is that I wasn't necessarily attaching any story to it, but I knew it was old. It felt deep. It felt big, right? And I was letting myself cry. I was meditating and just letting that emotion come up and out. So that was a real clearing and a real, I think, release, a real healing that can happen when we allow ourselves to let it come up and out. And so what I felt on that Monday was a lot of grief. And I love this reframe of what grief is. Grief is often called the healing feeling. So all of us carry some grief from childhood or feel grief about what did happen or what didn't happen, what doors were closed to us. And when we're willing to stay with the sadness, the grief, let it move through our system, grief really is an emotional experience that contains the whole range of emotions. Can be shock, denial, anger, depression, loneliness, fear. It can all be in those grief cycles. The thing that sets grief apart from depression is that grief comes through like a wave, right? Depression is sort of like a dark cloud that stays over your system or stays around you for, the DSM would say 2 weeks or longer. Grief is more momentary. It can hit you really hard, right? That Monday, it hit me for about 20 minutes and then it was gone. So this is how grief works. It comes in, it hits us. Can we stay with it? Can we feel it? Can we cry? Can we release? Can we shake? And then can we let it move through? All right. We've got 16 minutes. We can do this. I'm going to do just a little reparenting. So I know that was a lot in 40 minutes. I try to touch on the big topics, the big things. And then if you have more questions, you can always email me, reach out. But we're going to do just a little bit of reparenting, a little bit of sometimes what in the hypnotic world we call corrective regression, meaning that we're going back and we're just seeing if we can shift how we perceive what happened or how we feel. We're going to see if any feelings need to come up and out. So the idea that we have an inner child, we have stuck energy from our childhood. What does every child need? There's these pretty basic, they need comfort, attention, and love. So as an adult, can we go back and give comfort and attention and love to ourselves? That's really at the heart of this type of work. It's all about compassion. It's all about connection, attention, and love. So that's what we're going to work with here. So just get yourself comfortable. I'm going to encourage you to move around, maybe shake off all the intellectual stuff I just threw at you. That was a really mind-based experience. I'd like to see if you can actually shift out of such a busy intellectual, analytical mind space and drop a little more of your attention down into your pelvis, down into your feet, down into your body. Can you just feel where sensation is most prevalent in your body? Might be your hands, it might be the sensation of pressing your feet a little more firmly down into the floor. Just notice sensation in the body. One of the gifts of our subconscious mind is our capacity to work with imagination. Imagination is also a beautiful tool of that inner child. And so I want you to imagine yourself in this moment in a beautiful place in nature. It could be a place that you've literally visited. It might be a place that your psyche or your mind is creating for you in this moment. But we want to establish a safe place. And this place in nature is safe. It's protected. It's for you. And you, as you're imagining a safe place, it's helpful to have helpful others there with you. You can, of course. But know that this is a very protected, pristine, supportive, and nurturing place for you. It might be a tree, it might be a meadow, a mountain, a beach, a walking path. But just seeing yourself in this safe place and letting the sounds and the sight, the colors, vision of the sky above you, the feel of your feet on the earth, let all of the qualities of this safe place begin to surround you and settle almost into your body so that your body is literally responding as if it were actually standing on that beach or standing in the midst of that beautiful canopied forest. Working with safe place is such a powerful tool for our minds because our minds and our bodies experience it as if we're actually there. So as you settle into this safe place and continue to be curious about what else you might see as you continue to turn around and see the place, taking in all of its beauty, all of the security and safety it provides. And as you're staying here in this really safe, comfortable place, I want you to notice, maybe you're a little surprised that nearby is a scrapbook that you've not seen before. It's just there for you to go explore. And this scrapbook holds mementos, photographs, pictures, important events that have happened in your life, both big events and small events. Both events that you clearly remember and maybe some that you've forgotten. But inside this scrapbook are all of the interactions and learnings that have had an impact on you and are how you relate to yourself and to others. So if you feel curious about it, maybe your mind is saying, I just prefer to stay in my safe place. That's also a really powerful and healing experience. But if you feel curious, I'm going to encourage you to open. Let yourself turn the pages and see where you stop, what scene or impression you are drawn to. You may be conscious of it, maybe not immediately. The main thing is that You let yourself turn to whatever page your subconscious mind understands you need to see or connect with today. And then let yourself just gently and easily and safely allow the mind to drift back across time, across space to this moment in your history. And you're going back as an observer, you're going back with curiosity, non judgment. You're going back to discover what you need to know about that experience. Perhaps that experience as a child, maybe another experience earlier in your lifetime. And know that if any emotion comes, that you are the observer of this emotion, that you can stay with it, you can be with it. Just letting yourself watch what is happening in this scene, what is going on. Maybe you can better understand the feeling that you were having. You're back with a scene in your childhood. Can you understand what you were going through? And you, as the healthy, wise adult that you are going back and observing an earlier time. Taking it in, better understanding how this particular event played a role in how you moved forward in life. It's also possible, if you're observing an event that your inner child had in your experience of life, that you can go and soothe them, comfort them. You can even choose to take this child out of the scene and bring them to your safe place. Just notice what feels right. Your intuition will know. But as a wise, steadfast adult, you can provide comfort, attention, clarity to this child. You, as the adult, are the most important person in this child's life. This is why reparenting and reclaiming parts of ourself that splintered away as children is so powerful. Because we can show up now whenever this inner child gets upset, scared, lonely. Is there anything else that you need to learn from this inner child? Is there anything you need to share with this inner child? Sometimes it can be helpful to remind this earlier version of ourselves that it turns out okay. You make it through. You are loved. You are such a good child. Then stay in touch with your intuition. What does this child most need to hear from you that is supportive and loving and encouraging? And then letting this child know that it has a resource in you, that you will come to visit it and support it and encourage it whenever it needs you. And it's even possible that you can create a signal that this child might need to give you when it needs your presence, your kindness, your compassion, your connection. Maybe the child wants to tell you what the signal is. Maybe it's a tight shoulder or a certain word that comes to mind, a certain object that you might see that is a sign from the child that it needs your care, your connection. When you're ready, feel yourself moving back through that safe place, feeling the body relaxed, receptive, bringing back with you whatever information you needed to learn today. And whenever you're ready, you can open your eyes. All right, friends. I'll give you a couple moments just to settle. We have about 3 minutes. Often when you come out of it, spaces and experiences like that, it's sometimes hard to formulate questions or even write in a chat box. And so no expectation for that. And those of you who did do it, sounds like just based on what I'm seeing that there were tears and there was powerful, right? And inner child work is so powerful. Again, what does your child want? It wants care, connection, compassion, love, wants to be seen, wants to be heard. Doesn't have to be hard. You don't even have to go through a 20-minute meditation like we just did. It can just be a simple, okay, I see you, little one. I got your back. You're going to be okay. We got this. I'm here to support you. I will protect you. And to allow the emotion to come. So remember, we have lots of stuck emotional patterns in our system from things that weren't there for us as kids. And when we can allow that emotion, like I was describing last Monday, emotion just to come up and to be with it, to let it move through your system, that is a really powerful way to start to heal these blocks. Um, yeah, Mary asked a great question. When this old stuck stuff starts to release, can we feel tired? Of course. Yeah. I also want to share from the group that we're in that I'm leading right now. One of the women shared, she kind of realized she's having some inner child stuff. She goes, I just want to go, or I've just found myself wanting to go make macaroni and cheese. She's like, I know that's my inner child. So yeah, like, are there some things your child would like to do? Color, um, go make cookies, go put your rain boots on and stomp through puddles, right? So that's another way we really work with and heal our inner child is we connect to it. And again, our culture said, oh, don't be immature. You got to grow up and be serious. No, we have to, how does that little inner child actually help us heal and grow and expand? But yes, Mary, self-care is a lovely thing anytime, especially when we're releasing some of this old stuck energy. Yeah, children, those sweet children are in theta most of the time. Yeah, and beautiful that you went back to 18 to 22-year-olds. Yeah, that would still be inner child. It's a past aspect of yourself. And so this kind of a meditation, wherever that book opened for you, yeah, and what you needed to work with today was a young adult, right? Just coming out of childhood, just becoming an adult. And so having worked in the subconscious for a long time now, both in myself and with other people, I really trust that your unconscious mind is wise and it will take you where you need to go. It will take you back to the memory that you're ready to work with in this moment. That's the beautiful part too, is that you don't have to formulate it or figure out, oh, I'm going to go back to when I was 6. Maybe that's, you already know there was something that happened that you need to go back and explore. But often when we just allow ourselves to go in, what do I need today? What do I need to look at, understand, heal? This is how I tend to approach my therapy sessions. What is in the here and now? Where are you going back in this moment? It's the subconscious is wise. It takes you exactly where you need to go. Yeah, I like that, Jim, that it can be really interesting to imagine what a parent might have been able to say if they were well adjusted, if they were in their higher self, right? That is the thing, is that I think it, our parents, most likely, even if it was a challenging situation, most parents are trying to do the best they can with their level of consciousness. But some parents' level of consciousness is very shrouded, right? It's very stuck. And so, yeah, it can be really interesting to imagine if our parent had been healthy and well and conscious and awake, what they would have said to us. And also, you, Jim, being able to say to your child exactly what you knew it needed to hear is also equally healing, I think, as well. So, well, thank you all for hanging with me. It's a really big topic. If you want more, I'm always open for suggestions about Wisdom Wednesdays. So if there's some aspect of this today that you are like, I want some more information about, please reach out to me, info@heartlandyoga.com. This will be saved on YouTube. It'll show up on the Dr. Yoga Mama YouTube channel. So if you have people in your life that you think would benefit from the little exercise we did or any of this content today, please share with them. All right. Thank you all for being here and for staying with it. That's part of the thing. Can we stay with our inner child even when it's rebelling? Because that's, kids do rebel. They're meant to. All right, everyone. Yeah, thanks everyone. Appreciate your comments and your presence. I can definitely feel when I have people here with me. So I appreciate that presence. All right. Hope you have a really good rest of the day.